Welcome back to the Sleepy Mind channel. Tonight, we explore butterflies, following their movement, their timing, and the quiet ways they live across open spaces, plants, and seasons. If you find these long, calm science documentaries useful, you can like the video and subscribe for more. If you choose to leave a comment about where you are listening from, it is always interesting to see how far these stories travel. Let us begin. Butterflies are often noticed only for a moment. A brief movement across a path, a flash of color above grass, a shape that settles and lifts again before it can be examined. This fleeting quality is not incidental. It reflects how butterfly life is organized around movement, timing, and short windows of opportunity rather than permanence. There are thousands of butterfly species, each living according to its own rhythm. Some are large and slow, gliding across open ground with steady wing beats. Others are small and quick, staying close to vegetation and changing direction abruptly. Some appear only for a few weeks each year, while others can be seen for much longer periods, returning repeatedly to the same areas as long as conditions allow. Butterflies live wherever their needs are met. Meadows, forests, wetlands, mountains, coastlines, gardens, and even small patches of vegetation within cities can support them. Their presence does not require large, uninterrupted landscapes. It depends instead on the repeated appearance of the plants that support each stage of their lives. Color is often the first feature that draws attention. Bright oranges, deep blues, pale whites, and intricate patterns stand out against green backgrounds. These colors are not decorative. They relate to temperature, visibility, defense, and recognition. Some colors make butterflies easy to see. Others allow them to blend into their surroundings. Both approaches reflect adaptation to local conditions rather than display. Movement defines butterfly life. Adults spend much of their time in motion, alternating between flight, feeding, and brief periods of rest. Flight paths are rarely straight. Wind, light, and plant distribution shape each movement. There are no fixed routes, only repeated passages through familiar spaces, as long as those spaces continue to provide food. Butterflies also change completely as they live. Eggs, caterpillars, chrysalises, and adults occupy different places, eat different food, and move in different ways. These stages do not overlap in function. Each exists for a limited time before giving way to the next, with no return to earlier forms. Across the world, butterflies are found on every continent, except Antarctica. Their distribution follows plants more closely than climate alone. Wherever flowering plants grow and temperatures allow flight for part of the year, butterflies appear. In tropical regions, butterfly activity may continue throughout the year. Flowering often occurs continuously or in shifting cycles tied to rainfall rather than temperature. Many species live alongside one another, each using different plants or occupying different layers of vegetation. Diversity is highest in these regions, with many butterflies adapted to very specific ecological roles. In temperate regions, butterfly life follows the seasons more closely. Cold winters limit flight, and many species survive these periods as eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises. When temperatures rise and plants begin to grow, adults emerge in synchrony with local flowering, appearing suddenly after months of absence. Dry environments support butterflies through timing rather than abundance. Some species remain inactive for long periods, emerging only after rain triggers plant growth. Their adult lives may be brief, but during that time they feed, reproduce, and ensure the next generation is prepared to wait again. Mountain regions host butterflies adapted to cooler temperatures and thinner air. These species often fly close to the ground and rely on sunlight to warm their bodies before taking flight. Their activity windows are short, limited to periods when flowers bloom and conditions allow sustained movement. Forests provide layered habitats. Butterflies may fly high among tree canopies, where flowering trees produce nectar, or remain near the forest floor, using shade-tolerant plants. Clearings and edges are especially important, offering light and flowering plants together in the same space. Grasslands and open meadows support many familiar butterflies. Sunlight reaches the ground, and flowering plants are widespread. Movement here is often visible and continuous, with butterflies drifting between patches of color throughout the day. Coastal regions, wetlands, and riverbanks support species adapted to moisture, wind, and shifting vegetation. Some butterflies remain close to sheltered areas. Others travel along open corridors, shaped by water and plant growth. Across all of these environments, butterflies do not occupy territory in a fixed way. Their presence shifts with seasons, weather, and plant cycles. They appear where conditions align and fade when those conditions change. Seen globally, butterflies form a moving pattern rather than a stable one. Individual lives are short, but presence continues through repetition, returning again and again wherever the world allows butterflies to live. Butterflies belong to a distinct group of insects, defined by a specific combination of traits rather than a single feature. At a glance, their broad wings and upright resting posture make them recognizable. But these visible details are only part of what separates butterflies from other flying insects. One of the most consistent differences lies in how butterflies hold their wings when they are not flying. Most butterflies rest with their wings held upright over their bodies, pressed together so that only the underside is visible. This posture reduces exposure to wind and predators and allows the butterfly to regulate body temperature by adjusting orientation to the sun. Butterfly wings are covered in thousands of tiny overlapping scales. These scales give wings their color and texture. They also influence how wings interact with air and light. Unlike the transparent wings of some insects, butterfly wings are opaque and patterned, shaped by both structure and pigment. The body of a butterfly is divided into three main sections. The head holds compound eyes, antennae, and mouth parts. The thorax supports the wings and legs and contains the muscles required for flight. The abdomen houses digestive and reproductive organs. This structure is shared with many insects, but its proportions and surface features differ in butterflies. Butterfly antennae end in small clubs rather than tapering to a point. These clubs play a role in balance, navigation, and sensing chemical cues in the air. This feature helps distinguish butterflies from moths, whose antennae often have feathery or pointed forms. Feeding behavior also sets butterflies apart. Adult butterflies feed primarily on liquids. Nectar from flowers provides sugars needed for flight and daily activity. A long coiled feeding tube allows butterflies to reach into flowers without damaging delicate structures. When not in use, this tube remains curled beneath the head. Butterflies are active during daylight. Their bodies rely on external warmth to support flight. Sunlight raises body temperature, enabling muscles to function efficiently. When conditions are cool or overcast, butterflies may remain still, wings angled to absorb heat or folded tightly to conserve warmth. This dependence on light influences behavior throughout the day. Activity increases as temperatures rise and slows as light fades. Butterflies do not fly continuously. They alternate between movement and rest, adjusting effort to environmental conditions rather than maintaining constant activity. Butterflies differ from moths in several subtle ways beyond appearance and timing. Many butterflies form chrysalises rather than spinning cocoons. Their bodies tend to be more slender, and their flight is often more deliberate. These differences reflect long separation in evolutionary history rather than simple variation. Despite these distinctions, butterflies share many features with other insects. They do not exist apart from the broader insect world. What defines them is how a familiar insect body plan has been adapted for life in open light, close association with flowering plants, and short but active adult lives. Across species, these traits appear in many forms. Some butterflies are large and powerful flyers. Others are small and easily disturbed by wind. Some remain close to the ground. Others travel high above vegetation. Each variation reflects a different balance between structure, behavior, and environment. What unites butterflies is not uniformity, but a shared way of living shaped by wings, light, and timing. Their bodies are built for movement through air and brief contact with plants. Their lives unfold quickly, guided by conditions rather than control. Butterflies are not a single form repeated across the world. They are a wide collection of species that differ in size, color, behavior, and timing, often in ways that are easy to overlook unless watched closely. Some are large enough to be recognized from a distance, while others are so small that they pass unnoticed among leaves and grass. Scientists have identified many thousands of butterfly species, grouped into families that share common traits. These families reflect differences in wing shape, feeding behavior, flight style, and life cycle. Even within a single family, variation can be substantial, with species adapted to very specific plants or environments. Size varies greatly. Some butterflies have wingspans that stretch wider than a human hand, moving slowly and steadily through open air. Others are compact and fast, darting between plants and disappearing almost immediately after landing. Size influences how butterflies interact with wind, how far they travel, and how visible they are to predators. Wing shape also differs. Long, narrow wings support gliding and sustained flight. Shorter, rounded wings allow rapid turning and quick bursts of movement. These shapes are not aesthetic choices. They reflect how a butterfly moves through its environment and how it avoids danger while feeding. Color variation is equally broad. Some species display bold, contrasting patterns that remain visible even in motion. Others are muted, blending into bark, leaves, or soil when at rest. In some cases, closely related species differ only slightly in pattern, while in others, color differences are extreme despite similar body shape. Behavior varies with these physical traits. Some butterflies spend much of their time flying, rarely resting for long. Others remain perched, making short flights only when disturbed or when feeding. Some patrol specific areas repeatedly, while others wander widely without returning to the same spot. Habitat preference further divides butterfly species. Some are restricted to forests. Others prefer open grasslands or wetlands. A few specialize in disturbed areas where plants grow quickly and briefly. These preferences influence when butterflies appear and how long they remain visible in a given place. Life cycles differ as well. Some species produce multiple generations each year, with adults appearing repeatedly across a season. Others produce a single generation, emerging all at once and disappearing after reproduction. These patterns reflect how closely each species is tied to the timing of its host plants. Even among butterflies that appear similar, these differences matter. Two species may share the same colors, but emerge at different times. Others may share flight patterns, but rely on entirely different plants during development. These distinctions allow many species to share the same landscape without competing directly. Seen together, butterfly diversity creates a layered presence. At any moment, only a portion of species are active. Others are developing unseen or waiting for conditions to change. What appears as a simple scene often contains many overlapping life cycles, unfolding at different speeds. This variety is not organized around dominance or success. Each species persists because it fits a particular set of conditions closely enough to survive. Diversity itself allows butterflies, as a group, to remain widespread across changing environments. Butterflies live in close relationship with daylight. Their activity depends on light, not only for visibility, but for warmth. Unlike animals that generate heat internally, butterflies rely on the environment to raise their body temperature enough for flight. Sunlight becomes a condition for movement rather than a background feature. In the early morning, many butterflies remain still. Wings may be held open or angled toward the sun, exposing dark surfaces that absorb heat. This posture allows the body to warm gradually. Flight does not begin until muscles reach a workable temperature. On cool days, this delay may last hours. On warm days, it may pass quickly. As the day progresses, activity increases. Butterflies begin to move between resting places and flowers, alternating short flights with brief pauses. Movement is rarely continuous. Flight is energetic and costly, so it is balanced with rest. The pattern becomes one of repeated starts and stops, rather than sustained travel. Sunlight also shapes where butterflies go. Open areas warm more quickly than shaded ones. Edges between sun and shade become important zones, offering both warmth and shelter. Butterflies often follow these boundaries, moving along hedges, forest edges, and the margins of clearings. Cloud cover changes everything. When the sun disappears, body temperature drops. Flight becomes difficult or impossible. Butterflies respond by settling into vegetation, folding their wings tightly and waiting. This waiting is not a sign of inactivity in a broader sense. It is part of how butterfly life is paced by conditions rather than intention. Different species respond differently to light. Some are active only in strong sunlight. Others tolerate cooler or dimmer conditions. Wing color and size influence these thresholds. Darker wings absorb more heat. Larger wings collect more sunlight. These physical traits shape when and where each species can be active. Daylight also influences feeding. Flowers produce nectar in patterns that change throughout the day. Some offer more reward in the morning. Others peak later. Butterflies learn these patterns through repeated visits, adjusting timing rather than searching constantly. Resting behavior follows the same logic. Butterflies choose perches that provide both safety and warmth. A sunlit leaf, a rock, or a bare patch of ground may serve as a resting place between flights. These choices reduce energy loss and increase the amount of time available for feeding and reproduction. As afternoon advances and temperatures rise, activity may shift again. In very warm conditions, some butterflies reduce movement to avoid overheating. They seek shade or orient their wings to reflect rather than absorb light. Others remain active, especially species adapted to open, hot environments. Toward evening, light fades and temperatures fall. Flight slows and then stops. Butterflies settle into vegetation for the night, choosing places that offer shelter from wind and predators. Night brings a complete change in state. Movement ceases. The body cools. Activity pauses until conditions return. This daily rhythm repeats with variation. No 2 days are exactly the same. Weather alters timing. Season changes shift the length of active periods. Butterflies do not adjust by planning ahead. They respond moment by moment to light, temperature, and opportunity. Across weeks, this rhythm shapes how butterflies are seen. Some appear regularly at the same time each day. Others seem unpredictable, visible only when conditions align. Absence often reflects timing rather than disappearance. Daylight does not simply illuminate butterfly life, it structures it. Movement, feeding, and rest all follow the rise and fall of light. Butterflies exist within this cycle, their lives unfolding in close synchrony with the day itself. The body of a butterfly is shaped almost entirely by the demands of flight. Every part contributes to movement through air, balance in light wind, and the ability to land and lift again, repeatedly, throughout the day. The result is a body that appears delicate, but is precisely tuned to its function. Butterfly wings are large relative to body size. This broad surface area allows lift to be generated at low speeds, which suits the stop and start nature of butterfly movement. Unlike insects that rely on rapid, continuous flight, butterflies often glide briefly, then flap again, conserving energy while remaining mobile. Each wing is supported by a network of veins that provide strength without adding unnecessary weight. These veins also carry fluids and help maintain wing structure. Damage to a wing does not immediately end flight, but it changes balance and efficiency, often shortening the distances a butterfly can travel. Covering the wings are thousands of tiny scales, arranged like overlapping tiles. These scales are easily disturbed, which is why butterflies can leave colored dust on fingers or surfaces they touch. Loss of scales does not stop flight, but it alters insulation, color, and aerodynamic properties over time. Wing scales play a role in temperature control. Darker scales absorb heat more efficiently, warming flight muscles. Lighter scales reflect sunlight, reducing overheating. Some butterflies combine both, with dark areas near the body and lighter edges, balancing warmth and cooling during flight. The muscles that power flight are concentrated in the thorax. These muscles contract and relax rapidly, driving wing movement. Because butterflies cannot generate heat internally in large amounts, muscle performance depends heavily on body temperature. Warm muscles move efficiently. Cool muscles slow or stop movement entirely. Legs are adapted more for landing and holding than for walking. Butterflies spend little time moving on foot. When they land, legs grip leaves, flowers, or bark, allowing the body to stabilize while feeding or resting. Sensory receptors on the legs help detect chemical cues from plants. The abdomen remains relatively light. It does not contain heavy armor or thick muscle. This reduces drag and improves balance during flight. The abdomen also plays a role in reproduction, expanding and contracting as eggs develop or are laid. Feeding structures are designed to support flight rather than replace it. The long coiled feeding tube allows butterflies to drink nectar quickly without remaining exposed for long periods. Feeding and movement remain closely linked, with short visits followed by immediate departure. Resting posture contributes to survival. When wings are folded upright, less surface area is exposed to wind and predators. When wings are spread, sunlight can be absorbed. These postures are simple but effective adjustments that require no effort beyond positioning. Different species show variation within this basic design. Butterflies that migrate long distances often have stronger wings and more efficient flight patterns. Those that remain local may have rounder wings that support quick turns and short flights. Despite this variation, the overall design remains consistent. Butterflies are not built for speed, strength, or endurance alone. They are built for repeated movement through open space, guided by light and shaped by air. This body plan allows butterflies to move lightly through their environment, touching plants briefly and leaving little trace of their passage. Flight is not an occasional act. It is the central feature around which butterfly life is organized. Color is one of the most striking features of butterfly life, but it is not a single trait with a single purpose. The colors seen on butterfly wings serve different roles depending on where the butterfly lives, how it moves, and when it is active. Brightness, contrast, and pattern all relate to survival in practical ways. Some butterflies are vividly colored, with bold patterns that remain visible even when the wings are moving. These colors can signal that the butterfly is unpleasant to taste or toxic to predators. The signal does not require confrontation. Visibility itself becomes protection, reducing the chance of attack through recognition rather than defense. Other butterflies are colored to blend into their surroundings. Browns, grays, and muted greens allow wings to resemble bark, dried leaves, or soil when at rest. When these butterflies fold their wings upright, the bright upper surfaces disappear, leaving only camouflage exposed. Stillness completes the effect. Many butterflies combine both strategies. The upper surface of the wings may be bright and patterned, while the underside is subdued. When flying, color stands out. When resting, the butterfly becomes difficult to see. This ability to switch appearance without effort adds flexibility to daily behavior. Some patterns serve as imitation rather than warning. Certain butterflies resemble other species that predators avoid. This resemblance does not require shared chemistry or defense. It relies on visual similarity alone. Over time, predators learn to avoid a particular pattern, and that avoidance extends to species that look similar. Wing color also influences temperature. Dark colors absorb more heat, helping butterflies warm up quickly in cool conditions. Light colors reflect sunlight, reducing overheating in warm environments. The balance between these effects shapes where and when different species can be active. Color does not fade randomly. Wing scales are replaced only when a butterfly develops into an adult. As scales wear away through contact with plants and air, color may dull, but the pattern remains recognizable. Wear becomes part of how age is expressed, subtly altering visibility and flight efficiency. Butterflies see color differently than humans do. Their eyes detect a wider range of wavelengths, including ultraviolet light. Flowers often display ultraviolet patterns that guide butterflies toward nectar. These markings are invisible to human eyes, but clear signals to butterflies. Butterfly vision is designed to detect movement and contrast rather than fine detail. This allows rapid recognition of flowers, other butterflies, and potential threats while in flight. Vision works together with smell and touch, forming a sensory picture that supports constant movement. Learning refines this perception. Butterflies return more often to flowers that provide reliable food. Color, shape, and location become associated with reward. Over time, flight paths adjust to include these cues, reducing time spent searching. Despite this learning, behavior remains flexible. When conditions change, butterflies do not cling to past success. New flowers are tested. Old routes are abandoned. Sensory input overrides habit, keeping behavior aligned with the present rather than the past. Through color and vision together, butterflies navigate a world shaped by light. Their appearance and perception are linked, forming a system that supports brief contact, quick assessment, and continual movement. Feeding shapes much of a butterfly's daily life. Adult butterflies rely primarily on liquid food sources, drawing energy from sugars rather than storing large reserves. Nectar from flowers is the most familiar source, but it is not the only one. Many butterflies supplement nectar with minerals and nutrients gathered from other places in the landscape. When a butterfly feeds from a flower, the process is quick. The feeding tube uncoils, reaches into the flower, and draws up liquid through capillary action. Visits often last only seconds. Butterflies rarely remain at a single flower for long, moving on once the immediate reward is taken. Different flowers offer different rewards. Some produce nectar continuously, others replenish slowly. Butterflies learn these differences through repeated contact, returning more often to plants that provide reliable food. This learning reduces wasted movement and shapes the pattern of flight across an area. Not all butterflies depend on flowers alone. Some feed on sap that seeps from trees. Others gather nutrients from rotting fruit, damp soil, or animal droppings. These sources provide salts and minerals not always present in nectar. Butterflies often congregate at such spots, remaining still for longer periods while feeding. This behavior is especially common among males, whose bodies require additional minerals for reproduction. The sight of many butterflies resting together on wet ground is not social interaction, but shared access to a valuable resource. Feeding influences when butterflies are active. Flowers open and close at specific times. Nectar concentration changes with temperature and humidity. Butterflies adjust feeding times accordingly, visiting some plants early in the day and others later. Activity follows reward rather than a fixed schedule. Resting is as important as feeding. Flight consumes energy quickly, and butterflies alternate between movement and stillness throughout the day. Resting spots are chosen for safety and warmth. Leaves, stems, rocks, and bare ground can all serve as temporary perches. While resting, butterflies remain alert. Wings may be held upright or partially open, depending on temperature and surroundings. A sudden disturbance triggers immediate flight. Rest does not mean disengagement. It is part of the rhythm that allows movement to continue. Feeding and resting together create a pattern of short, repeated actions. A butterfly moves, feeds, rests, and moves again. Over time, these actions trace a loose path across the landscape, linking plants and resources without forming a fixed route. As butterflies age, feeding behavior can change. Newly emerged adults may feed frequently to build energy reserves. Older butterflies may feed less often as wings wear and flight becomes more costly. Wear does not stop feeding, but it shortens the distances a butterfly can travel. This gradual change adds another layer to butterfly life. Activity does not end abruptly. It slows. Movement becomes shorter. Rest becomes longer. The same feeding behavior continues, but at a different pace. Through feeding, butterflies interact constantly with plants and the environment. These interactions are brief and uncoordinated, yet they repeat across many individuals and many days. The result is a steady flow of movement and contact rather than sustained presence in any one place. Finding food requires constant movement through space rather than directed travel toward a destination. Butterflies do not move with a fixed plan. They drift, turn, pause, and resume, responding to color, light, scent, and airflow as they go. Each flight is guided by immediate cues rather than memory of a route. As a butterfly moves through an area, flowers are tested rather than assumed. A brief landing reveals whether nectar is present. If the reward is low or absent, the butterfly lifts again and continues on. If the reward is sufficient, the butterfly may return to the same plant or nearby flowers several times before moving on. Over the course of a day, this testing creates a loose pattern. Areas with reliable food are visited more frequently. Areas that offer little are passed through quickly. These patterns are not permanent. They last only as long as the flowers continue to provide. Butterflies do not defend feeding areas. Multiple individuals may visit the same flowers without conflict. When competition increases, butterflies simply move elsewhere or adjust timing. This flexibility reduces the need for aggression and allows many individuals to share the same resources. Wind plays an important role in how butterflies move between feeding sites. Light winds can assist flight, allowing longer glides and easier travel. Strong winds make movement costly and unpredictable. In such conditions, butterflies stay closer to the ground or remain sheltered, reducing foraging until conditions improve. Light direction also shapes movement. Butterflies often fly towards sunlit areas where flowers are more visible and body temperature is easier to maintain. Shaded areas are used primarily for rest or brief passage rather than extended feeding. As feeding continues, movement becomes less exploratory and more focused. Butterflies return to flowers that have proven reliable, reducing time spent searching. This does not create rigid routes, but it does create preference. When conditions change, preference dissolves. Resting between feeding bouts allows energy to be conserved. Butterflies choose resting places that offer both safety and thermal advantage. A sunlit leaf warms the body. A shaded stem prevents overheating. These choices shift throughout the day as conditions change. Movement and rest alternate repeatedly. A butterfly may feed for seconds, rest for minutes, then feed again. Over hours, these short actions add up to significant travel without sustained effort. This pattern of feeding and movement continues throughout the adult life of a butterfly. It does not change dramatically with experience. What changes is the scale. As wings wear and flight becomes less efficient, movement covers shorter distances. Feeding remains frequent, but travel between sources becomes more limited. Despite this, butterflies remain responsive. They continue to test flowers, adjust timing, and seek suitable resting places. Activity persists at a pace set by physical condition rather than intention. Through this continual adjustment, butterflies maintain a close relationship with the immediate environment. They do not carry expectations forward. Each moment of feeding or flight is resolved as it occurs, shaped by what is available then. Reproduction begins quietly and with careful placement rather than display. Female butterflies do not lay eggs at random. Each egg represents a commitment of energy and time, and its success depends almost entirely on where it is placed. The adult butterfly does not remain to protect or care for the offspring. The environment chosen at the moment of laying must be sufficient on its own. Most butterfly eggs are laid on or very near specific plants. These plants will become the only food source available to the caterpillar once it hatches. For this reason, host plant selection is precise. A female butterfly tests leaves by landing briefly and touching them with sensory receptors on her legs. Chemical cues confirm whether the plant is suitable. Eggs are often small and unobtrusive. They may be laid singly or in small groups, depending on species. Shape and surface texture vary, but eggs are generally placed in locations that reduce visibility and exposure. Undersides of leaves, stems close to the ground, or sheltered parts of plants are commonly used. Once laid, the egg remains still. Development begins inside, guided by temperature and humidity. Warmer conditions speed development. Cooler conditions slow it. The egg does not respond actively to its surroundings. It relies entirely on placement and timing. When the caterpillar emerges, its world is immediately limited to what surrounds it. Movement is slow and deliberate. Feeding begins almost at once. The caterpillar consumes leaf material continuously, converting plant tissue into rapid growth. Unlike adult butterflies, caterpillars do not move far. Food must be close and abundant. Growth at this stage is intense. The caterpillar increases in size quickly, shedding its outer skin multiple times as it expands. Each stage ends with a pause while a new skin forms. These pauses are brief, and feeding resumes immediately afterward. Caterpillars are shaped for consumption rather than movement. Their bodies are soft, flexible, and supported by multiple gripping legs that allow them to cling to leaves and stems. Mouth parts are adapted for chewing rather than sipping, breaking down tough plant tissue efficiently. Different species show different feeding patterns. Some feed openly during the day, others remain hidden, feeding at night or from within rolled leaves. Color and pattern may provide camouflage or warning, depending on the caterpillar's chemistry and behavior. As feeding continues, the caterpillar's presence alters the plant slightly. Leaves show damage. Edges become irregular. This change is local and temporary, affecting only the immediate area. The caterpillar does not move on unless food becomes scarce. Throughout this stage, the caterpillar remains vulnerable. Its defense lies primarily in concealment, chemical deterrence, or timing rather than strength. Survival depends on remaining unnoticed long enough to complete growth. Eventually feeding slows. Movement becomes more deliberate. The caterpillar searches for a stable place to attach itself. This transition marks the end of one stage and the preparation for the next, guided by internal timing rather than external signals. As the caterpillar grows, its relationship with the plant becomes more focused. Feeding remains the primary activity, but the pace begins to change. Periods of intense eating are followed by longer pauses. Movement becomes less frequent and more purposeful. The caterpillar no longer wanders even short distances unless food quality declines. Each stage of growth ends with molting. The outer skin splits and is shed, revealing a new layer beneath that allows further expansion. These moments are brief but significant. During them, the caterpillar is still and vulnerable, relying on concealment rather than resistance. Once the new skin hardens, feeding resumes. With each successive stage, the caterpillar becomes heavier and more conspicuous. Color may intensify, patterns become clearer. In some species, spines or hair-like structures develop, altering how the caterpillar is perceived by predators. These features do not prevent attack, but they may reduce it through irritation or warning. Despite this, the caterpillar's primary strategy remains timing. Growth is rapid. The longer this stage lasts, the greater the chance of being discovered. Efficient feeding shortens exposure. Energy intake is directed almost entirely toward building tissue rather than movement or defense. As the final stage approaches, behavior shifts again. Feeding slows noticeably. The caterpillar begins to move away from the feeding site, searching for a place that offers stability rather than food. This location may be on the same plant, a nearby stem, or a sheltered surface such as a branch or wall. Once a suitable spot is found, the caterpillar anchors itself. Silk is produced and attached, forming a support that will hold the body in place. The caterpillar positions itself carefully, ensuring that gravity and orientation will not interfere with what comes next. At this point, external activity largely stops. The caterpillar's body contracts and stills. The outer skin loosens and splits one final time, revealing the chrysalis beneath. This transition is slow and precise, unfolding over hours rather than moments. The chrysalis appears firm and immobile, but inside it, activity is intense. Tissues break down and reorganize. Structures that supported chewing and crawling are dismantled. New structures for flight, vision, and reproduction form in their place. This process does not resemble simple growth. It is a complete reorganization, guided by internal biological signals. Temperature and humidity influence how long this stage lasts. In warm conditions, development proceeds more quickly. In cooler conditions, it slows. Some species pause development entirely during unfavorable seasons, remaining in the chrysalis state for extended periods until conditions improve. From the outside, nothing appears to change. The chrysalis does not move. It does not feed. It does not respond to light or sound. Yet internally, the transformation continues, preparing the organism for a completely different way of living. This stage is not a period of rest. It is a period of restructuring. Energy stored during the caterpillar stage fuels the process. No additional resources are taken in. Everything required for emergence is already present. Eventually, subtle changes appear. Color may darken. Wing patterns become faintly visible through the outer casing. These signs indicate that development is nearing completion and that the next stage is approaching. Emergence begins slowly. The outer surface of the chrysalis splits, and the newly formed butterfly works its way free with small, deliberate movements. The body appears soft and compact, very different from the adult form that will soon follow. Wings are present but crumpled, folded tightly against the body and unable to support flight. At this stage, movement is limited. The butterfly clings to the empty chrysalis or a nearby surface, hanging downward. Gravity becomes important now. Fluid stored within the body is pumped into the wings through a network of veins, causing them to expand gradually. This process takes time and must occur without interruption. As the wings lengthen, their patterns become clearer. Colors intensify as the surface stretches and dries. Veins harden, giving structure and strength. The wings shift from soft and flexible to firm and resilient, capable of supporting movement through air. Drying is essential. Until moisture evaporates and wing tissue stabilizes, flight is impossible. During this period, the butterfly remains still. Any disturbance can damage the wings permanently. Survival depends on remaining unnoticed long enough for this process to complete. Once the wings are fully expanded and dry, posture changes. The butterfly adjusts its position, testing balance and grip. Short movements follow, often limited to repositioning rather than flight. The body is now capable of movement, but strength builds gradually. First flights are brief. A short lift, a landing nearby, then stillness again. These early movements allow muscles to engage and coordination to improve. Over time, flight becomes smoother and more controlled, though it remains cautious at first. Feeding usually begins soon after. The butterfly searches for nectar or other liquid sources to replenish energy reserves depleted during transformation. These early feeding visits are especially important, setting the pace for the adult stage. Adult behavior differs sharply from that of the caterpillar. Movement replaces consumption as the dominant activity. Feeding remains frequent, but it is interspersed with flight, rest, and searching rather than continuous eating. The adult stage is not one of growth. It is a period of activity and reproduction. Energy is directed toward movement, mating, and egg-laying rather than building body mass. Wings will not grow or regenerate. What emerges must last for the remainder of the butterfly's life. Wear accumulates over time. Wing edges fray. Scales are lost. Color dulls slightly. These changes affect flight efficiency, but do not stop activity immediately. Butterflies continue to feed and move, adjusting behavior as physical condition changes. As days pass, activity patterns stabilize. Feeding and rest alternate according to light and temperature. Roots form loosely between flowers and resting places. Movement becomes familiar but never fixed. This stage continues until energy declines or conditions change. There is no clear signal marking its end. Activity slows gradually. Flight becomes shorter. Rest becomes longer. The same actions repeat, but with less range. Through this adult stage, the butterfly's presence remains brief but active. Movement connects plants across space. Feeding supports reproduction. Egg-laying prepares the next cycle, often without the adult encountering its offspring again. As adult life continues, differences between male and female butterflies become more apparent through behavior rather than appearance alone. In many species, males are more active flyers, moving repeatedly across open areas in search of potential mates. Their movement often follows loose patrols rather than fixed routes, covering the same ground many times a day. Females tend to fly less continuously. Their movement is more deliberate, divided between feeding and searching for suitable places to lay eggs. While males may revisit the same area many times, females often move on once a location has been assessed. Physical differences vary by species. In some butterflies, males and females appear almost identical. In others, color, size, or pattern differs noticeably. These differences can influence how individuals recognize one another, but they do not determine behavior on their own. Mating begins with detection rather than pursuit. Visual cues, movement, and chemical signals all play a role. A male may approach a passing butterfly to determine whether it is a potential mate. If the signals do not align, The interaction ends quickly and without conflict. When mating occurs, it is brief and largely still. Afterward, the butterflies separate and resume their individual activities. There is no long-term pairing. Each adult continues independently, guided by feeding needs and reproductive timing. For females, egg-laying becomes the central focus of the remaining adult life. This process requires careful selection rather than speed. A female butterfly moves through vegetation slowly, landing repeatedly to test plants. Sensory receptors on the legs detect chemical cues that confirm whether a plant is suitable. Host plant choice is precise. Caterpillars cannot travel far after hatching, and many species can feed on only one type of plant or a small group of related plants. Laying eggs on the wrong plant almost always results in failure. Because of this, females may pass over many plants before finding one that meets the necessary conditions. Eggs are laid individually or in small groups depending on species. Placement is deliberate. Undersides of leaves, stems close to the ground, or sheltered crevices reduce exposure to predators and environmental stress. Once an egg is laid, the female does not return to it. Egg laying may occur over several days or weeks. Between laying sessions, females continue to feed, replenishing energy reserves. This alternation between feeding and egg-laying shapes daily movement, slowing flight, and increasing time spent near vegetation. As eggs accumulate, the adult's activity gradually changes. Flight becomes shorter. Rest becomes more frequent. The focus narrows to suitable plants rather than wide exploration. These changes are subtle and continuous rather than sudden. The adult butterfly does not witness the outcome of this work. Eggs hatch later, and development proceeds without further interaction. The adult life cycle ends independently of the next generation's progress. Across this process, timing remains essential. Egg laying must align with plant growth, temperature, and season. Too early, and food may not be available. Too late, and development may not complete before conditions deteriorate. Success depends on fitting into the present moment rather than anticipating the future. These differences between male and female behavior do not create hierarchy. They reflect division of roles shaped by biology rather than choice. Each contributes to continuation through a distinct pattern of movement and timing. Movement across landscapes is shaped by scale rather than intention. Most butterflies do not travel far in a single day. Their movement is local, shifting between feeding areas, resting spots, and egg-laying sites within a limited range. This range is not fixed. It expands or contracts depending on resource availability and physical condition. In areas where flowers are dense, movement remains compact. Butterflies move repeatedly between nearby plants, conserving energy and reducing exposure. In areas where flowers are scattered, flight paths lengthen. Butterflies cross open ground, follow lines of vegetation, and explore edges where resources are more likely to appear. These movements do not create territory. Butterflies do not defend space or exclude others. Multiple individuals may use the same area simultaneously or at different times of day. When activity increases, butterflies simply move through one another, adjusting paths without conflict. Some species show a tendency to remain close to where they emerged. Others wander more freely, rarely returning to the same resting place twice. These differences reflect wing structure, energy use, and feeding needs rather than preference. A smaller number of butterflies move far beyond local areas. Migration occurs when seasonal conditions make long-distance movement more effective than remaining in place. In these species, movement is extended across weeks or months, following patterns of temperature and plant availability. Migratory butterflies do not complete the journey in a single lifetime. Movement occurs in stages across generations. One generation travels part of the route, lays eggs, and dies. The next generation continues. This sequence allows long-distance movement without requiring individual endurance beyond physical limits. During migration, behavior shifts. Feeding becomes opportunistic rather than selective. Resting occurs wherever shelter appears. Directional movement is influenced by light, wind, and internal cues rather than landmarks. Precision gives way to persistence. Not all long-distance movement is migration. Some butterflies disperse gradually, expanding presence into new areas when conditions allow. This dispersal is slow and irregular, shaped by reproduction rather than travel alone. Daily and seasonal rhythms shape all of these movements. Activity increases during periods of warmth and light. It slows during cold or wet conditions. Over a season, presence rises and falls as adults emerge, reproduce, and disappear. In many species, this rhythm is tightly compressed. Adults appear for a brief period, sometimes only a few weeks, then vanish. In others, multiple generations overlap, creating a longer season of activity. These patterns reflect how closely development is tied to temperature and plant growth. Seasonal change does not bring closure, it brings transition. Activity shifts from flight to development, from visible movement to stillness within eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises. The absence of butterflies from view marks a change of stage rather than an end. Across years, these rhythms repeat with variation. Timing shifts slightly. Abundance fluctuates. Locations of activity change. The underlying cycle remains, shaped by conditions rather than memory. Butterfly life, taken as a whole, is not defined by distance traveled or time spent active. It is defined by movement that aligns with opportunity. When conditions allow flight, butterflies move. When conditions require stillness, they wait. The pattern continues wherever alignment occurs. Butterflies do not live alone within the spaces they move through. Every stage of their lives unfolds alongside many other organisms, each interacting in different ways. Plants form the most obvious relationship, providing food for both caterpillars and adults. But this connection exists within a wider network of contact. Caterpillars feed directly on plants, and this feeding alters leaves in small local ways. A single caterpillar may remove only a portion of a plant, rarely enough to cause lasting damage. Plants respond by producing new leaves or adjusting growth patterns. The interaction remains temporary and limited to the immediate area. Adult butterflies interact with plants differently. Nectar feeding removes only small amounts of liquid, leaving flowers largely unchanged. Pollination occurs as a result of contact rather than intention. Pollen adheres to the body and is transferred incidentally as butterflies move between plants. This transfer supports plant reproduction without butterflies altering their feeding behavior. Other insects share the same plants and spaces. Bees, flies, beetles, and wasps visit flowers for similar reasons. Competition is reduced through timing and preference rather than confrontation. Some insects arrive early in the day, others later. Some feed quickly and move on, Others remain longer. Butterflies adjust by shifting activity rather than defending access. Predators are present throughout butterfly life, though encounters are often brief. Birds, reptiles, and insects may attempt to capture butterflies or caterpillars when they are exposed. Avoidance depends on concealment, timing, and, in some cases, chemical deterrence rather than resistance. Many caterpillars feed openly despite this risk. Their defense may lie in camouflage, blending into leaves and stems, or in warning colors that signal unpalatability. Some species contain compounds derived from host plants that make them unpleasant to eat. These compounds persist into adulthood, influencing wing color and pattern. Parasites also play a role, particularly during the caterpillar stage. Tiny insects may lay eggs inside or on caterpillars, with larvae developing internally. These interactions are rarely visible from the outside and often end the caterpillar's life before transformation can complete. Such losses are part of the broader pattern rather than an exception. Despite these pressures, butterfly populations persist because survival does not depend on every individual. Many eggs are laid, some succeed, others do not. Continuation emerges from numbers and repetition rather than protection of individuals. Butterflies also interact with the physical environment in subtle ways. Wind influences flight paths. Rain alters feeding opportunities. Temperature determines when movement is possible. These forces shape daily behavior without requiring adaptation beyond timing and posture. Across all of these interactions, butterflies do not modify their surroundings to suit themselves. They do not build shelters beyond temporary attachment points. They do not store food or defend territory. Their presence remains light, passing through environments rather than reshaping them. This lightness allows butterflies to coexist with many other forms of life. Their activities overlap without domination. They arrive, feed, reproduce, and move on, leaving space for others to do the same. Variation among butterfly species reflects different solutions to the same constraints. Some rely on concealment, others rely on visibility. Some move constantly, others remain still for long periods. None of these strategies is superior in general. Each works within a particular set of conditions. Because of this, butterfly diversity does not form a hierarchy. There is no single form that represents success. Each species persists by fitting closely to the environment it encounters, using timing, movement, and contact rather than control. Across landscapes, this produces a shifting mosaic. Different species appear in different places and at different times. The overall presence remains steady even as individual forms change. This variation without ranking allows butterfly life to remain widespread. When conditions change, some species become less visible while others emerge. The pattern adjusts without collapse. Daily rhythm and seasonal rhythm overlap constantly in butterfly life, shaping when movement is possible and when it must pause. The day provides immediate limits through light and temperature. The season provides longer limits through plant growth and development timing. Butterflies live within both at once. During warm periods of the year, daily rhythm becomes the primary organizer. Activity rises with the sun and falls as light fades. Within that window, movement follows temperature more closely than time. A cool morning delays flight, even in full light. A warm afternoon extends activity, even as the sun lowers. Seasonal rhythm operates more slowly, but with greater consequence. The emergence of adults is tied to plant growth that began weeks or months earlier. Eggs hatch when leaves are available. Caterpillars grow while plants can support feeding. Chrysalises form in time to avoid unfavorable conditions. In species with multiple generations each year, this rhythm repeats several times. Adults appear, reproduce, and disappear while the season continues. Each generation experiences slightly different conditions, adjusting timing and behavior accordingly. In species with a single generation, timing is more compressed. Emergence may occur within a narrow window. Activity is intense but brief. When that window closes, visible butterfly life disappears, even though development continues unseen. Seasonal change does not bring an end to activity so much as a shift in form. When adults vanish from view, eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises remain. Development slows or pauses, protected by placement and structure chosen earlier. Winter, where it occurs, is experienced as stillness rather than absence. Butterflies are present in forms that do not move. The return of warmth does not awaken memory. It allows processes to resume where they paused. In regions without cold winters, seasonal rhythm follows rainfall, or plant cycles instead. Periods of growth and scarcity alternate. Butterflies emerge in response, adjusting timing rather than changing structure. These rhythms shape how butterflies are noticed. A place may seem empty for months, then suddenly active. This change reflects alignment rather than arrival. The organisms were already present, waiting in a different form. Across years, the rhythm repeats with variation. Timing shifts, abundance changes. The pattern remains recognizable even as details differ. Continuity does not require repetition to be exact. Butterfly life fits into these rhythms without effort. There is no anticipation of season beyond what is encoded in development. No adjustment beyond response to current conditions. The cycle continues because it matches the pace of the environment closely enough to persist. Across these daily and seasonal rhythms, butterfly life remains organized around moments rather than durations. Activity expands when conditions allow and contracts when they do not. There is no effort to maintain presence beyond what the environment supports at that time. When adults are active, their lives are brief and outward-facing. Movement, feeding, mating, and egg-laying occur within a limited span. Each action is small on its own, but together they set the conditions for the next stage to unfold elsewhere and later. When adults disappear from view, the cycle does not end. Eggs remain attached to leaves. Caterpillars feed quietly within foliage. Chrysalises hang motionless from stems, branches, or sheltered surfaces. These forms occupy the same landscapes without drawing attention, allowing life to continue through stillness. This alternation between movement and concealment allows butterflies to persist in environments that change rapidly. A sudden shift in weather may halt flight, but it does not undo development already underway. The system absorbs interruption by shifting stage rather than resisting change. Across a landscape, many such cycles unfold at once. Some individuals are flying, while others are feeding as caterpillars. Some are forming chrysalises, while others are emerging as adults. This overlap creates continuity even when no single form is always visible. Butterflies do not coordinate these cycles. They arise from timing built into development and from immediate response to conditions. Continuity is produced through overlap rather than planning. Because of this, butterfly presence does not accumulate in one place. It flows. One area becomes active, while another quiets. Later, the pattern reverses. Presence moves across space as plants grow, flower, and decline. This movement leaves a little trace. Plants recover from feeding. Attachment points decay. Flight paths vanish as soon as they are made. The environment carries the cycle forward without being reshaped by it. What persists is not structure, but recurrence. As long as plants grow again, eggs can be laid again. As long as temperatures rise again, wings can open again. The cycle depends on repetition rather than permanence. Butterfly life fits into this repetition without requiring stability. It relies on timing, alignment, and the ability to pass through brief windows of opportunity. When those windows open, activity resumes. When they close, activity waits in another form. Across time, this pattern allows butterflies to remain present, even in landscapes that are fragmented, seasonal, or unpredictable. Their lives do not demand long, uninterrupted conditions. They require only that suitable moments continue to appear somewhere. Across all of this repetition, butterfly life remains closely tied to the scale of the individual rather than the scale of the landscape. A single butterfly experiences the world through short flights, brief rests, and repeated contact with plants. What appears as a broad system emerges from countless small movements, rather than from sustained occupation of space. A butterfly does not remain long in one place. Even when feeding from a rich cluster of flowers, it lifts frequently, shifts position, and tests nearby options. This constant movement reduces dependence on any single plant and spreads interaction across many points. The landscape is experienced as a sequence of opportunities rather than a territory. Resting moments are brief but important. Wings may be held open to absorb warmth or closed to reduce visibility. During these pauses, energy is conserved and the body adjusts to temperature. These still moments make continued movement possible later in the day. As the day progresses, these small decisions accumulate. A butterfly may cover a surprising distance through repeated short flights without ever traveling far in a straight line. Movement is shaped by curves, stops, and changes in direction, rather than by distance alone. This pattern continues even as conditions deteriorate. When flowers become scarce, butterflies do not search endlessly. They slow, they rest longer, they wait. This waiting is not a failure to act, but a shift in strategy that preserves energy until opportunity returns. Across weeks, this behavior allows butterflies to outlast brief shortages. A few poor days do not end activity entirely. Development continues elsewhere. Emergence may occur later rather than sooner. The cycle adjusts its pace rather than breaking. Across seasons, this flexibility becomes more apparent. The same area may host butterflies only briefly each year. At other times, it remains empty of visible activity. The absence reflects timing rather than suitability. Conditions may simply be supporting a different stage of life. Because of this, butterfly presence often feels unpredictable. One year a species appears abundant, another year it seems absent. These fluctuations are not always signs of long-term change. They reflect how tightly butterfly life is tied to immediate conditions. Within this variability, the overall pattern remains stable. Species persist because their life cycles can pause, resume, and overlap with changing environments. Development does not require constant favorable conditions. It requires enough alignment, often spread across time. This capacity to pause is built into the structure of the life cycle itself. Eggs endure, caterpillars feed quickly, chrysalises hold transformation in place, adults move when possible. Each stage occupies a different relationship with the environment, allowing the whole cycle to persist through change. The result is a form of continuity that does not rely on dominance or permanence. Butterfly life remains present because it is distributed across stages and times rather than concentrated in one form. As these cycles repeat, butterfly presence becomes part of the background of living systems. Not constant, not fixed, but recurring often enough to remain familiar wherever plants grow and seasons turn. Across all these movements, the way butterflies interact with space remains gentle and temporary. They arrive, use what is available, and move on without altering the place in any lasting way. A flower visited many times in a day may still look unchanged by evening. A leaf that supported a caterpillar shows only a small mark, quickly absorbed into the growth of the plant. This light touch allows butterflies to exist alongside many other forms of life without displacing them. Their feeding does not exhaust resources in one place. Their presence spreads across many small interactions, rather than concentrating in a single area. This distribution reduces pressure and allows continued use of the same spaces by different species at different times. As adult butterflies age, this pattern becomes more pronounced. Wings show signs of wear, flight becomes less efficient, distances shorten. The butterfly still feeds, still rests, still responds to light and warmth, but the scale of movement contracts. Activity remains, but it is focused closer to where resources are easiest to reach. This gradual change does not interrupt the cycle. Egg-laying may already be complete. Development may already be underway elsewhere. The end of one adult life overlaps with the beginning of many others at different stages. Across populations, this overlap smooths the effect of individual loss. No single butterfly carries the continuation of the species. Continuity depends on timing and repetition rather than survival of individuals. Butterflies do not adjust their behavior to compensate for loss. They do not increase effort when numbers decline. They continue to act within the same limits, trusting the alignment of life stages to carry the cycle forward. This trust is not conscious. It is built into the structure of the life cycle. Each stage exists long enough to fulfill its role, then gives way to the next. The cycle does not speed up to recover loss or slow down to preserve individuals. It proceeds at the pace allowed by conditions. Across landscapes that change from year to year, this approach proves resilient. Butterfly life does not require stability over long periods. It requires only that suitable conditions appear often enough, somewhere within reach, for each stage to complete. Because of this, butterflies remain present, even where environments are fragmented or altered. A narrow strip of vegetation, a seasonal garden, a temporary patch of growth can support part of the cycle. Presence shifts rather than disappears. The visibility of butterflies therefore varies widely. Some days they seem abundant, moving constantly through open spaces. Other days they seem absent, even though development continues unseen. This variation reflects timing rather than disappearance. Seen over long periods, butterfly life forms a repeating pattern of appearance movement, stillness, and renewal. The pattern holds even as details change. Species differ, timing shifts, locations vary, the underlying rhythm remains. Across this continuing cycle, the presence of butterflies becomes a matter of timing rather than abundance. They appear when conditions align and withdraw when they do not, leaving little indication of where they have gone. The land itself holds the next stages, carrying eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises forward, while adult movement fades from view. This separation between visible activity and hidden development allows butterfly life to pass through change without interruption. A field may be cut, a garden may be replanted, a path may be disturbed, yet the cycle persists if some suitable plants remain nearby. The next generation emerges into a landscape that has already shifted, responding to what is present rather than what was. Butterflies do not attempt to stabilize their surroundings. They do not return to repair or reinforce places they have used before. Each visit is temporary, each interaction brief. This impermanence reduces reliance on any single location and spreads activity across many small opportunities. As adults move through these opportunities, their actions remain simple: landing, feeding, lifting again, resting briefly, then moving on. Over time, these repeated actions connect many plants without creating fixed paths. The effect is distributed rather than concentrated. Within this distribution, variation plays a central role. Different species are active at different times of day. Some prefer open sunlight. Others tolerate shade. Some move continuously. Others remain still for long periods between flights. These differences reduce overlap and allow many butterflies to share the same space without conflict. This sharing extends across seasons as well. Species appear in sequence rather than all at once. One emerges early, another later. One completes its cycle quickly, another more slowly. The landscape hosts a procession rather than a crowd. Across years, this procession changes subtly. Timing shifts with temperature and rainfall. Some species appear earlier than before, others later. The pattern adjusts without breaking, guided by development that responds to conditions rather than to fixed dates. Butterfly life does not accumulate structures or stores that must be protected. There is no surplus to guard, no territory to defend. Continuation depends on repetition rather than preservation. This makes butterfly presence both fragile and resilient. Fragile at the level of individuals, whose lives are short and easily disrupted. Resilient at the level of cycles, which continue as long as conditions reappear often enough. As the day fades, butterflies settle into vegetation, folding wings and becoming still. Movement pauses. The body cools. Another shift occurs, not toward an ending, but toward a different state within the same cycle. When light returns, movement resumes if conditions allow. If not, stillness continues. This responsiveness defines butterfly life more than any single behavior or trait. Over long spans, these alternating states create a steady rhythm of appearance and absence. The rhythm does not aim toward resolution. It continues, shaped by the environment and carried forward by repetition. Across the full span of their lives, butterflies remain closely tied to the immediate state of their surroundings. They do not prepare for distant futures or store resources beyond what is needed in the moment. Instead, each stage of life meets the conditions it encounters and proceeds as far as those conditions allow. When adults are active, their lives unfold in open air. Movement carries them between flowers, resting places, and host plants. Decisions are small and repeated. A landing here, a short flight there. The day is shaped by these incremental choices rather than by any single long journey. When conditions shift, behavior shifts with them. A sudden drop in temperature brings stillness. A return of warmth brings movement again. There is no hesitation, no recovery period. Activity resumes as soon as the body allows it. This immediate responsiveness contrasts with the slower pace of development occurring elsewhere. While adults move and feed, eggs remain fixed to leaves. Caterpillars feed steadily, growing whether or not adults are visible nearby. Chrysalises hold transformation in place, detached from daily change. These overlapping timelines allow butterfly life to persist through interruption. If adult activity is brief, development may still be ongoing. If development pauses, adult emergence may wait. The cycle continues because its parts are distributed across time. Across landscapes, this distribution becomes visible as pattern rather than presence. One area may host adults today, another may host caterpillars, another may hold chrysalises attached to stems or hidden beneath leaves. Together, these locations sustain the cycle without any single place needing to support every stage at once. This separation reduces vulnerability. A single disturbance does not end the cycle. Loss in one area is balanced by continuation in another. The system spreads risk by spreading life stages across space. Butterflies do not manage this spread. It arises from behavior shaped over many generations rather than from decision. Adults lay eggs where conditions suit the next stage. Development proceeds where it can. Emergence occurs when timing allows. The result is a life cycle that moves lightly through space. It does not accumulate in one place. It does not depend on permanence. It depends on the repeated appearance of suitable conditions, often brief and widely scattered. Over time, this produces a landscape that feels alive without being crowded. Butterflies appear singly or in small numbers, moving through open spaces without drawing attention for long. Their presence is noticeable, but not dominating. This balance allows butterflies to exist alongside many other forms of life. They do not displace other insects or plants. They occupy a narrow set of opportunities and leave room for others to do the same. As seasons progress, activity slows or shifts into other forms. Adults disappear. Development continues unseen. The visible world quiets, but the cycle remains active elsewhere. This continuity without constant visibility gives butterfly life its distinctive rhythm. It is present often enough to be familiar, yet absent often enough to feel fleeting. The rhythm persists because it aligns closely with the changing world rather than attempting to resist it. Across this long unfolding, butterfly life remains closely tied to chance encounters rather than sustained control. A butterfly does not shape its surroundings to suit itself. It encounters what is already present and responds within the limits of its body and timing. A flowering plant becomes important only when it is encountered at the right moment. A leaf becomes significant only when it holds an egg. A sheltered stem matters only long enough for a chrysalis to remain undisturbed. Each element plays a role briefly, then fades back into the background. Because of this, butterfly life does not create lasting centers of activity. There are no fixed places that must remain intact year after year. Instead, importance moves from place to place as conditions shift. What supports one generation may be irrelevant to the next. Adults reflect this transience in their behavior. They move lightly through space, rarely returning to the same resting place for long. Feeding is spread across many flowers rather than concentrated on one. Movement remains exploratory even when resources are familiar. This exploration is not restless, it is economical. Butterflies sample, assess, and commit only briefly. When reward diminishes, attention shifts. This prevents over-reliance on any single resource and allows rapid adjustment when conditions change. As adults age, their ability to move declines gradually. Wings wear. Flight becomes less efficient. The scale of movement shrinks, but behavior remains the same. Feeding continues. Resting continues. Egg-laying continues, if time allows. The pattern does not change, only its reach. Development elsewhere continues independently. Caterpillars feed and grow without reference to adult activity. Chrysalises hold transformation in place regardless of weather outside. These stages are insulated from short-term change by placement and structure chosen earlier. This insulation allows butterfly life to absorb variability. A poor day for flight does not undo feeding already completed. A brief disturbance does not halt development underway. The cycle continues because its stages are not all exposed at once. Across populations, this distribution produces continuity without concentration. Many individuals operate independently, each subject to chance. Some succeed, others do not. The population persists because success is spread rather than centralized. Butterflies do not adjust behavior to compensate for loss. They do not increase effort or alter strategy. They continue to act within the same limits, relying on timing and repetition to carry the cycle forward. Over years, this approach allows butterfly presence to persist even where environments are unpredictable. Populations fluctuate. Visibility changes. Species appear and disappear locally. The broader pattern remains. This persistence does not depend on memory or planning. It depends on alignment. When conditions allow, activity resumes. When they do not, activity waits in another form. Seen at this scale, butterfly life becomes a sequence of brief appearances, connected by longer periods of development and stillness. Movement is visible only part of the time. The rest of the cycle continues unseen. The landscape carries these unseen stages forward, holding eggs, caterpillars, and chrysalises within plants and shelter until the next moment of alignment arrives. Across all of these cycles, butterfly life remains organized around brief alignment rather than sustained presence. Conditions come together for short periods, and activity unfolds within those windows. When alignment ends, movement pauses or shifts into another form without resistance. This reliance on alignment shapes how butterflies use space. A plant that is suitable today may be irrelevant tomorrow. A sheltered spot that protects a chrysalis one season may not be used again. Importance moves constantly, following temperature, light, and plant growth, rather than fixed features of the landscape. Butterflies do not attempt to return places to usefulness. They do not reinforce or maintain sites. When conditions change, attention moves elsewhere. This mobility reduces dependence on any single location and allows life to continue across fragmented environments. Because of this, butterfly presence often feels scattered. Individuals appear alone or in small numbers rather than in groups. They move independently, rarely interacting except briefly during feeding or mating. Even then, contact is short, and leaves no lasting trace. This independence extends across generations. Adults do not prepare environments for their offspring beyond placing eggs carefully. They do not alter plants to improve future conditions. They trust the alignment that exists at the moment of egg laying to be sufficient. That trust is built into the life cycle. Each stage depends on what is present when it begins. Eggs rely on the plant they are attached to. Caterpillars rely on immediate food. Chrysalises rely on shelter. Adults rely on movement and light. No stage carries resources forward for the next. This separation prevents accumulation of obligation. If conditions fail at one stage, the cycle does not attempt to recover by altering later stages. Loss is absorbed through repetition rather than compensation. Across populations, this produces a pattern where abundance fluctuates naturally. Some seasons bring many adults into view, others bring few. These shifts reflect timing and survival rather than long-term decline or growth. Butterflies respond to these fluctuations by continuing as they always have. Behavior does not change to correct outcomes. It remains aligned to present conditions. This consistency allows patterns to persist even when individual results vary. As adults move through their brief lives, they leave behind the next stage already set in place. Eggs remain attached to leaves. Caterpillars feed quietly. Chrysalises hang motionless. The visible world may empty of movement, but life continues beneath that surface. This alternation between visibility and concealment gives butterfly life its distinctive rhythm. Movement is fleeting. Stillness lasts longer. The cycle progresses through forms that appear and disappear in sequence. Over time, this rhythm becomes familiar. Butterflies are expected to come and go. Their absence is not surprising. Their return is not remarkable. It is part of the way life moves through changing conditions. Because butterfly life does not depend on permanence, it remains adaptable. It can pause without failing. It can resume without rebuilding. It can continue wherever alignment occurs again. Across these repeated cycles, butterfly life remains shaped by how little it holds on to. Nothing is carried forward beyond what is required for the next stage. There is no accumulation of material, no reinforcement of place, no preservation of roots or shelters. Each generation begins again with what the environment provides at that moment. This lightness affects how butterflies interact with change. When a familiar plant disappears, there is no attempt to return. When a new plant appears, it is tested without hesitation. Movement remains open, guided by present cues rather than past success. Adults reflect this openness in the way they move. Flight does not trace fixed paths. It curves, pauses, and resumes, responding to light, wind, and color as they appear. A butterfly may pass through the same space many times without repeating the same route. The landscape is read continuously rather than memorized. Resting follows the same pattern. Perches are temporary. A leaf used one moment may be abandoned the next. Stillness lasts only as long as conditions support it. When light shifts or temperature changes, posture adjusts or movement resumes. As the adult stage progresses, these behaviors remain consistent, even as physical capacity changes. Wings wear, and flight becomes less efficient, but the pattern of movement does not change. Shorter flights replace longer ones. Rest becomes more frequent. Feeding continues whenever possible. The end of adult life does not arrive as a distinct event. Activity diminishes gradually. Movement slows. Rest occupies more of the day. Eventually, flight stops. The cycle continues elsewhere, already underway. Development in earlier stages does not respond to this ending. Eggs remain fixed to leaves. Caterpillars feed and grow. Chrysalises hold transformation in place. Each stage proceeds according to its own timing, insulated from the fate of the adult. This separation between stages allows butterfly life to absorb loss without disruption. The death of an adult does not interrupt development already set in motion. Continuity depends on overlap rather than survival of individuals. Across populations, this overlap creates resilience without concentration. Many individuals contribute small chances of success. Some fail, others succeed. The cycle persists because it is distributed rather than focused. Butterflies do not adjust behavior to increase certainty. They do not slow reproduction in poor conditions or accelerate it in good ones. They continue to act within the same limits, relying on alignment rather than strategy. Over years, this approach produces variability that is expected rather than alarming. Numbers rise and fall. Visibility changes. Species appear and disappear locally. The broader presence remains. Butterfly life, taken as a whole, is not defined by stability. It is defined by fit. Each stage fits into a moment that exists briefly, then passes. The cycle continues because those moments recur often enough. This recurring alignment allows butterflies to remain part of landscapes that are seasonal, fragmented, and unpredictable. Their lives do not demand permanence. They require only that opportunities return. Across this unfolding pattern, butterfly life remains defined by its ability to pass through moments without resisting them. Each stage exists long enough to complete its role, then gives way to the next. There is no attempt to preserve a state beyond its usefulness. The cycle moves forward because it does not linger. This movement through stages allows butterflies to exist in environments that change quickly. A season may be wet or dry. Plants may grow densely one year and sparsely the next. Butterfly life adjusts by shifting timing rather than altering structure. Eggs are laid when plants are present. Development proceeds as long as food remains. Emergence occurs when conditions allow flight. Adults experience the most immediate relationship with change. They respond directly to temperature, light, and wind. When these conditions are favorable, movement fills open space. When they are not, stillness replaces flight. The same body accommodates both states without modification. In contrast, earlier stages rely on protection rather than response. Eggs are fixed. Caterpillars feed steadily within limited range. Chrysalises remain still, holding transformation in place. These stages do not adjust behavior. They endure conditions as they are, relying on placement rather than movement. Together, these approaches allow butterfly life to continue through variability. When adults are forced to pause, development continues elsewhere. When development slows, adults may already have completed their role. The cycle remains active even when one form is absent. Across a landscape, this creates a shifting presence. Some areas host flight and color, others hold unseen stages. Over time, these roles change places. The landscape carries the cycle forward without holding any single form for long. Butterflies do not accumulate influence in one location. They move lightly through many. Their presence does not reshape space permanently. It passes through, leaving only subtle traces that fade quickly. Because of this, butterfly life remains easy to overlook. Activity is brief, stillness lasts longer. The cycle continues largely out of view, revealed only when conditions align for movement again. This way of living does not depend on strength or endurance, it depends on timing. Each stage begins when conditions allow and ends when its role is complete. The cycle progresses because these windows open often enough, not because they are protected. Across years, this produces continuity without stability. The pattern persists, even though the details change. Different species appear. Timing shifts. Locations vary. The cycle remains recognizable because it follows the same sequence, adapted to new circumstances each time. As this pattern continues, butterfly life becomes less about individual moments and more about how those moments fit together over time. Movement, feeding, development, and stillness do not compete with one another. They alternate, each taking its turn as conditions allow. What appears as simplicity at the surface is supported by careful alignment underneath. Eggs are placed where food will be available. Caterpillars grow quickly enough to reduce exposure. Chrysalises hold transformation in place through periods when movement would be impossible. Adults move when light and warmth make flight efficient. Each stage relies on a different relationship with the environment. This division of roles across stages allows butterfly life to move through change without interruption. When one form cannot function, another can. When movement stops, development continues. When development pauses, movement resumes elsewhere. The cycle is not dependent on constant activity in any single form. Across landscapes, this creates a pattern that is spread thinly rather than concentrated. Butterflies do not gather in one place for long. They appear, disperse, and reappear in response to plant growth and weather. Their presence is distributed across space and time rather than fixed. This distribution reduces strain on resources. Feeding is spread across many plants. Egg laying is spread across many leaves. Development is spread across many sheltered locations. No single point carries the weight of the entire cycle. Because of this, butterfly life remains compatible with many different environments. It can pass through areas that are temporary, seasonal, or frequently altered. As long as suitable moments appear, the cycle can continue. Butterflies do not attempt to ensure these moments. They do not shape landscapes to provide them. They simply respond when they occur. This responsiveness allows butterfly life to remain present without becoming dominant. Over long periods, this way of living produces familiarity without permanence. Butterflies are expected to return, but not in the same numbers, the same places, or at the same times each year. Their return follows conditions rather than schedules. This lack of predictability does not indicate fragility. It reflects flexibility. Butterfly life is built to work with variability rather than against it. The cycle remains open, ready to move when alignment occurs again. As attention remains with this process, the world appears active, even when little is visible. Plants carry eggs, leaves shelter caterpillars, stems and branches hold chrysalises. The absence of flight does not mark an ending, only a shift in form. Movement will return when conditions allow. Wings will open again. Contact will occur again. The cycle continues because it does not demand more than what the environment can offer at any one time. As the cycle carries on, butterfly life shows how continuity can exist without accumulation. Nothing builds toward permanence. Each stage completes its role and releases its hold on place and time. What remains is not structure, but readiness for the next alignment. This readiness allows butterfly life to persist across environments that change year by year. A meadow may shift in plant composition. A forest edge may open or close. A garden may be replanted entirely. Butterfly life does not rely on these places staying the same. It relies on the return of suitable conditions somewhere within reach. When those conditions appear, activity resumes without delay. Adults emerge and begin moving. Feeding begins where nectar is available. Egg-laying occurs where host plants are found. Development follows, insulated from the surface world by placement and timing. When conditions withdraw, activity does not resist. Movement fades. Development pauses or continues unseen. The cycle waits without strain. This waiting is not inactivity, but a different form of presence held within eggs, caterpillars, or chrysalises. Across years, this produces a rhythm that feels familiar without being fixed. Butterflies return, but not always to the same places. They appear, but not always in the same numbers. Their presence is reliable in pattern, even when it is unpredictable in detail. This reliability comes from how lightly butterfly life moves through the world. It does not attempt to secure resources beyond what is needed for the next stage. It does not defend territory. It does not build structures meant to last. It fits into brief windows and moves on. Because of this, butterfly life remains compatible with change. It does not collapse when conditions shift. It adjusts by altering timing and location rather than behavior itself. The cycle continues because it does not demand continuity from the environment. As attention stays with this process, the distinction between presence and absence becomes less important. What matters is that the cycle remains capable of resuming. Eggs wait. Caterpillars feed when possible. Chrysalises hold transformation in place. Adults move when light and warmth return. The pattern persists, not because it is protected, but because it is repeatable. Each stage can begin again wherever conditions allow, without reference to where it last occurred. As this settling continues, butterfly life can be understood less as a sequence of events and more as a capacity to keep re-entering the world when conditions permit. The cycle does not push forward. It waits, resumes, and moves again, shaped by timing rather than momentum. What allows this is the way each stage requires so little beyond what is immediately available. Eggs need only a suitable leaf. Caterpillars need only enough food to grow quickly. Chrysalises need only stillness and shelter. Adults need only warmth, light, and access to liquid food. None of these requirements extend far into the future. They are met in the present or not at all. Because of this, butterfly life does not accumulate pressure. There is no point at which too much depends on a single place or moment. If one opportunity passes, another may appear elsewhere. The cycle does not attempt to compensate. It simply continues when alignment occurs again. This way of living produces a kind of quiet continuity. Butterflies do not remain visible long enough to dominate attention. They appear briefly, move through, and fade again. Yet over time, these brief appearances repeat often enough to feel familiar. The familiarity does not come from permanence. It comes from recurrence. Each year brings some version of the same movement: wings opening, flight beginning, contact with plants, egg laying, stillness returning. The details differ, but the pattern holds. In this pattern, absence is as meaningful as presence. When butterflies are not seen, development may still be underway. When development is complete, movement may return quickly. The cycle moves between forms without announcing its transitions. The environment carries these transitions quietly. Leaves hold eggs without change in appearance. Stems support chrysalises without drawing notice. Plants recover from feeding and continue to grow. The cycle is supported without being highlighted. This unobtrusive quality allows butterfly life to remain compatible with many forms of change. Landscapes can shift, seasons can vary, human activity can alter space. As long as some suitable conditions recur, the cycle can continue. Butterflies do not require stability. They require opportunity. Their lives are built around the ability to take advantage of short periods when conditions align, then withdraw into another stage when they do not. As this process unfolds repeatedly, it creates a sense of ongoing movement that does not build toward an ending. It settles into a rhythm that continues as long as the world continues to change. As this rhythm continues, butterfly life shows how persistence can exist without accumulation. Nothing is gathered for later beyond what is needed to move into the next stage. No structure is reinforced. No location is secured. The cycle depends on being able to begin again rather than on maintaining what came before. This ability to begin again rests on how closely butterfly life stays aligned with present conditions. Eggs are laid only when host plants are available. Caterpillars feed only while leaves remain suitable. Chrysalises form where stillness can be maintained. Adults fly only when light and warmth allow it. Each stage begins only when its requirements are met. Because these requirements are modest and brief, butterfly life does not compete with the future. It does not demand long-term stability. It fits into short windows and moves on. When those windows close, the cycle does not break. It shifts into another form that can wait. Across time, this creates a pattern that is easy to overlook because it does not insist on attention. Butterflies do not remain long enough in one place to define it. Their presence is felt through motion rather than occupation. The landscape remains open to other forms of life at the same time. This openness allows butterfly life to coexist with change rather than oppose it. Shifts in vegetation, climate, and land use alter where and when butterflies appear, but not the way they live. Movement adjusts, timing shifts. The cycle continues wherever alignment returns. The absence of visible butterflies does not signal loss in the way it might for organisms that depend on constant presence. For butterflies, absence often means transition. Development continues quietly, protected by placement and timing rather than by activity. When emergence occurs, it does not restore what existed before. It creates something new within the same pattern. New adults move through a landscape that has already changed. They respond to what is there now, not to what was there previously. This repeated renewal prevents butterfly life from becoming fixed or predictable. It also prevents it from becoming fragile. The cycle does not rely on memory, infrastructure, or defense. It relies on responsiveness. As long as there are moments when plants grow, leaves remain long enough to be eaten, stems remain still enough to hold a chrysalis, and light and warmth return, butterfly life can continue. These moments do not need to occur everywhere at once. They only need to occur often enough, somewhere. Over long spans, this produces a steady presence that feels both familiar and fleeting. Butterflies return year after year, but never in exactly the same way. The pattern remains recognizable, even as its details change. This balance between repetition and variation allows butterfly life to persist across environments that are seasonal, fragmented, and continually shifting. It does not require protection from change. It requires only the chance to move with it. As this movement settles further, butterfly life can be seen as a sequence of openings rather than a sequence of events. Each opening appears briefly, allows activity, then closes again. The cycle continues because these openings return, not because any single one is held open for long. Butterflies meet these openings without hesitation. When warmth allows flight, wings lift and movement resumes. When plants provide nectar, feeding occurs. When leaves are suitable, eggs are laid. When stillness is required, development waits. Each response is immediate and proportional, neither delayed nor forced. This proportionality keeps butterfly life closely matched to its surroundings. There is no excess effort, no attempt to extend activity beyond what conditions support. Flight stops when it becomes costly. Feeding shifts when reward diminishes. Movement contracts when energy declines. The cycle proceeds within limits, rather than pushing against them. Across space, this produces a pattern that feels light and transient. Butterflies do not occupy places for long. They pass through, interact briefly, and move on. The same place may support activity one day, and none the next. This does not weaken the cycle. It spreads it. Because the cycle is spread, it becomes difficult to pin down. Butterfly life is not anchored to a single field, path, or plant. It appears wherever conditions align and disappears when they do not. Presence is defined by recurrence rather than location. This recurrence depends on the way stages are separated in time. Adults move and feed for a short period. Eggs remain fixed. Caterpillars feed intensively, then withdraw. Chrysalises hold transformation in place. Each stage carries the cycle forward without overlapping demands on the same conditions. The separation reduces conflict between needs. Adults require light and warmth. Caterpillars require food. Chrysalises require stillness. By occurring at different times and places, these needs do not compete directly. The cycle remains balanced without coordination. Over years, this balance produces continuity without predictability. The sequence remains familiar, but the details vary. Some years bring early emergence, others bring delay. Some places host many butterflies, others host few. The pattern persists because it is flexible rather than fixed. This flexibility allows butterfly life to remain compatible with change. Landscapes shift, climates vary, and human activity alters space. The cycle adjusts by moving its openings rather than by altering its structure. Butterflies do not attempt to stabilize these changes. They do not rebuild what is lost or preserve what is gained. They meet what is present and move through it. The cycle continues because it does not insist on permanence. As the settling continues, the emphasis moves away from movement itself and toward the conditions that make movement possible. Light, warmth, plants, and shelter form a loose framework that supports the cycle without directing it. Within this framework, butterfly life repeats quietly, not as a single story, but as many overlapping lives unfolding in different places at different times. Each life is brief. The pattern is not. As this final portion unfolds, butterfly life can be understood as something that does not accumulate meaning through duration, but through return. Each appearance is brief, each disappearance is temporary. The cycle remains intact because it does not rely on continuity of presence, only on the possibility of re-entry. What supports this re-entry is not complexity, but sufficiency. A leaf that lasts long enough, a stem that remains still long enough, a day that warms enough for flight. These are small requirements, but they occur often enough, in enough places, to allow the cycle to continue. Butterflies do not require ideal conditions, they require workable ones. Their lives are shaped around tolerance rather than optimization. When conditions are marginal, activity slows. When they improve, activity resumes. There is no urgency to maximize success within a narrow window. The cycle is patient because it does not need to be hurried. Across time, this patience becomes resilience. Not the resilience of endurance, but the resilience of repetition. The same sequence unfolds again and again, adjusted slightly each time to fit what is present. The world does not need to be held still for butterfly life to persist. It needs only to remain open to change. As the cycle settles into this rhythm, movement becomes less the focus than the conditions that allow it. Light returns, warmth builds, plants grow. The sequence begins again somewhere, even if it has ended elsewhere. Butterfly life continues in this way, not as a single story reaching a conclusion, but as a pattern that remains ready to begin again whenever the world allows it. As this final space is filled, butterfly life remains defined by its readiness rather than its arrival. It does not announce itself in advance or linger once conditions pass. It moves into the world when light, warmth, and plants align, then withdraws again into other forms when they do not. This readiness is what allows butterfly life to remain present across time without demanding attention. It waits in eggs attached to leaves. It grows quietly as a caterpillar, focused entirely on feeding. It pauses within a chrysalis, holding change in place. It moves briefly as an adult, touching the world lightly before passing on. None of these stages require explanation from the one that comes before. Each begins when its moment arrives and ends when its role is complete. The cycle does not look ahead or back. It remains oriented to what is possible now. Because of this, butterfly life does not resolve into an ending. It continues through repetition, appearing again whenever conditions allow. The world does not need to remember butterflies for them to return. It needs only to provide space, plants, and time enough for the sequence to begin again. In this way, butterfly life remains part of the background rhythm of living systems. Sometimes visible, sometimes not. Always ready to resume. Always passing through. As this movement comes to rest, butterfly life remains defined not by how long it stays visible, but by how easily it can begin again. Each stage completes its role and releases its hold on place and time. Wings open when warmth allows. Feeding occurs when flowers are present. Eggs are placed where leaves will hold. When conditions change, the cycle does not resist. It withdraws into another form and waits. In this way, butterfly life continues quietly, passing through landscapes without needing permanence, ready to return whenever light, plants, and time align again. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you have enjoyed spending time moving through the butterflies.